The NFL trade deadline has come and gone. The San Francisco 49ers, adding depth to the defensive line, have traded a 7th-round pick for Khalil Davis from the Houston Texans, and we're breaking down all the moves from the NFL trade deadline on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock here with my esteemed guest. Winky Wednesday, no Croc today. So Nicholas Winkler standing in as we break down all the latest moves from the 2024 NFL trade deadline, including the San Francisco 49ers. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And now let's properly bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Action News 8 Sports with Nick Winkler.
Wink, the 49ers made a move, and it was Khalil Davis.
Can't believe it.
No relation to Khalil Davis, who was already on the San Francisco 49ers, already a member of the interior of the 49ers defensive line. The Niners sent a 7th-round pick to the Houston Texans for Khalil Davis. Khalil Davis does have a brother, by the way, who used to play with him on his Nebraska college team, Carlos Davis. I'm not sure if Carlos Davis is kicking around the NFL anywhere right now, but Khalil Davis is now on his way from Houston to San Francisco to be a member of the 49ers, and a depth move more than anything, Wink, for the 49ers defensive line in Khalil Davis. What was your initial thoughts on the trade deadline and the move for the San Francisco 49ers?
Is what every fan wanted, right? We were sitting around watching. Come on, make a trade, make a trade. The clock's ticking. It's 1 o'clock. What's going on? Oh, all right. A depth piece on the defensive line. Okay, all right. I mean, it could be worse, right? They definitely got better by making this move because we talked about it. This was kind of an area of concern, was offensive and defensive lines of areas of depth. The 49ers were lacking. I mean, they're not great on the interior since Hargrave went down. So I think it's a solid move by them. You just give up a 7th, not even next year. It's in 2 years. I mean, it's going to be a little confusing with Khalil, but I think we'll figure it out. Give it a week or two, and then we'll all be on the same page.
I think we can make it through a half a season, and who knows, Khalil Davis might turn out to be someone the Niners want to bring back. He is a free agent to be this offseason. Khalil Davis is not a huge move, but a depth move. And we thought the defensive line was a place the 49ers would target in the trade market, and it was the defensive line, and they went for the interior guy. And maybe some fans disappointed. They wanted a bigger move, and I think the 49ers have set us up to expect more moves than with other teams because they've been so active, and had a feeling they'd do something. They kind of got the last deal of the deadline done, and it was Khalil Davis coming in. Khalil Davis, 6'2", 215, as he is listed. At the combine, he was 6'1", 308. So he might have gotten a little bit bigger. I don't know if he got taller. I think they just give him that extra half an inch so he can be 6'2" and not 6'1" on his official roster. But may have, gained some pounds and some strength as he's been in the NFL. And I think he fits exactly what the 49ers have on the interior of the defensive line, the kind of player they look for on the interior of the defensive line. He's of that same mold of Hargrave, who's out for the year, which is one of the reasons they need to bring in another player, to bring in some depth, because they're getting a little thin on the defensive line. Kevin Givens, another guy, shorter, stouter build, but someone who can penetrate a little bit. And that's exactly what Khalil Davis is, Wink. He is a 315-pound guy, but he's more of a penetrator than, say, a two-gap, traditional nose tackle plugger type of player, even though, when you're built that low to the ground, you look like someone would be more of a nose tackle type. He's not. He's more of a penetrator. That's his game. His number one thing isn't, stopping the run and taking on double teams. And the 49ers just haven't wanted that style of player really since they let go of DJ Jones. And DJ Jones, even though he was stout enough to, two gap in the run game, he was also a penetrator. So you have to be able to penetrate on the 49ers defensive line, or else you may not apply. And so that's what Khalil Davis is. Former 6th-round pick from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's bounced around the NFL a little bit. He spent some time with the Indianapolis Colts, who picked him up off waivers from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020. Then I think he was on the practice squad with the Steelers for a little while. Speaking of Javon Hargrave, who's one of those players that's that's scheme diverse, fits in a lot of places, and ended up finding a home for at least a couple of seasons in Houston. Had his best season last year in 2023, where he played on the same defensive line as current 49ers defensive lineman Malik Collins, who came also from the Houston Texans, and he had his best, most productive year last year with DeMeco Ryans, with the Houston Texans. He had 23 total pressures. He had 2 sacks last year, 4 quarterback hits, 17 hurries, and 24 total tackles last season, and a Pro Football Focus grade of 64.4. And so that was his best season so far as a pro. Step back production-wise this year, hasn't played as many snaps for that Houston defensive line, which why they were willing to give up a depth piece there. He's had 8 total pressures this year, played a little bit in every game so far, 1 sack, and 6 hurries. So that is the stat book on Khalil Davis, who is the newest San Francisco 49er, sending not a 2025 7th-round pick, but a 2026 7th-round pick. So not a lot to give up for a little bit of depth for the 49ers defensive line with so many people banged up. Hargrave's banged up. The aforementioned Kevin Givens has been banged up. Yetur Gross-Matos is a player who can rush from the interior a little bit, and he's on IR as well right now. And so the 49ers really they needed depth on the defensive line and maybe didn't get themselves a huge difference-making player. But, he's someone that can get into the rotation and create a little penetration.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't yet, it's the first thing I did. Go look up some highlights of Khalil Davis, because he's a guy that, like you said, he can penetrate. He can squeeze between 2 guys and just get right towards the quarterback. There's a great highlight where he's being triple teamed. I mean, can you imagine they even try to double team him? What's that going to do for Nick Bosa on the edge? Like, this is the kind of guy you want in the middle of your line. You said he's not a big run stuffer. That's all right. You've got guys like that. This guy's more of you can move him around. You can have him in the middle. You could probably even put him on the outside, let him rush the passer a little bit opposite Bosa when you need to do something like that. He's a great rotational piece. This is a guy he's got explosiveness off the line. Like I said, go watch some highlights. You're going to see how quick he gets off the ball. It's great. That's what you want in an interior lineman. You want a guy that's going to disrupt a play. And I feel like he's one of those guys that can do that, not on a regular basis, but I think we're going to hear his name quite a bit here down the stretch for the 49ers.
A very short-armed player. He's kind of squatty with his build, but 315 pounds, but explosive and super athletic for his weight. And look at his combine numbers. They're actually kind of crazy, Wink. So I'm looking at his spider chart here from Mock Draftable, and he's like, 87, 89th percentile in some of his athletic testing numbers. And that's versus just defensive linemen, not interior defensive linemen. So at 308 pounds at the combine, Wink, he ran 4.75 in the 40-yard dash, which is kind of a ridiculous time. And 32 reps on the bench press, which is a great number. He had a 32-inch vertical jump, I believe, as well. So, wow. He's an athlete. He's an athletic guy out of Nebraska. And so that's what the 49ers are getting. And I think those types of athletic traits are important for 33-inch vertical jump, I think is what the number is.
Undersold him a little bit.
Yeah. And so, he's a player that has some athleticism and has some upfield ability. And in Chris Kursurik's defensive line scheme, you got to be able to get upfield. And then that's what he is. So I don't think he's going to be a huge difference-making player. I don't think he's going to go collect, 10 sacks or anything like that. But he's a player that fits what they want up front. And, they found – clearly they just liked him a little bit better than maybe someone that they could have claimed off of somebody's practice squad or something like that to fill the depth role if they started to run out of players on the defensive line. So that's Khalil Davis. Not a huge move, but a depth piece, and it didn't cost a lot. And, I think it's a good move. And I understand why some fans might be disappointed. They wanted, a Jadeveon Clowney at least, or a Azeez Ojulari, which apparently the 49ers weren't willing to give up a 4th or a 5th round pick for an edge guy, which was the asking price. So Azeez Ojulari did not get moved by the New York Giants. There was, we'll talk about a lot of the moves around the NFL, and the Lions definitely got a lot better, ended up making a move and bringing in Za'Darius Smith from the Cleveland Browns, which I thought was a phenomenal move. And actually the Steelers ended up adding a defensive line from the Packers, and the Packers might not have wanted to let someone like Preston Smith go to the Niners if the Niners might have been interested in Preston Smith. So another defensive lineman on another minor move, 7th round pick on the move on the D line around the NFL. Wink, I want to get in a little bit more of some of these moves, where the 49ers are. And of course, I want to get your opinions on the actual biggest addition the 49ers are making at this trade deadline. Same player they added 2 deadlines ago, Christian McCaffrey, joining the squad, and a whole lot more coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Hey, 49ers fans, remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back, and they have added amazing new game modes I need to tell you about. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, hiring coaching staffs, now you get to call the offensive plays during games as well. Additionally, you'll dig in the new tools you can use to work with, such as individual training camps and upgraded negotiation systems. So this fun and realistic game just got a lot better. So if you already have it installed, be sure to update it so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans, and I'm sure you will love it as well. And a special offer for our Locked On listeners: use the promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, Locked On NFL, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating a dynasty, any dynasty, including that San Francisco dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. 49ers getting back in action in week 10 of the NFL, and you can get in on the action too in week 10 with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on any of the action in sports in over 30 states, including California. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. And it's DFS that is simple. And how simple is it at Prize Picks? Well, all you do is you pick 2 or more players and you pick more or less than on the stat projections at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. For example, you think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week, or Lamar Jackson will pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns. Well, there you go. You pick the more than on those stat projections. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, so Khalil Davis added to the San Francisco 49ers defensive line. And Wink, it's not the only addition the 49ers are going to make. We saw Drake Greenlaw at practice running around on the side. He had a helmet on too as he ran on the side. Not practicing, but he's running. He's moving around on his repaired Achilles tendon. So that's a great sign. Both those guys dealing with Achilles injuries. And the 49ers might get Money Moody back as well this week. He's back at practice. Juwan Jennings, Soaz Muscle, he's back at practice. So the 49ers are making additions that are much more impactful probably than Khalil Davis, just by getting some guys who have been hurt healthy and back for a second half run of the season in week 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, the biggest thing the 49ers could do here in the second half of the season is get healthy, right? Because they've played this whole first half without Christian McCaffrey, the reigning offensive player of the year. And they still find themselves very much in the thick of the NFC West, if not the NFC. I mean, there's still 9 games to be played. And what I like most about the 49ers going forward, too, is when you look at their schedule, like, they have some tough games ahead of them. But timing-wise, this is really the toughest one this weekend. And luckily, they're coming off of a bye. They got that dreaded 10 a.m. start time, right, at Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay, on a short week, went into overtime, really grueling kind of rainy game, got their defense just beaten up by that Kansas City offensive line. So it's kind of the perfect time to take on a Tampa Bay squad, especially if you're going to get Juwan Jennings back, especially if you're going to get Christian McCaffrey back for his first action. Maybe Jordan Mason took the 2 weeks and healed himself up as well, because we haven't seen the 49ers on full throttle so far this year. And we still won't see him this weekend, but at least it's going to be more 80%, 85, 90. Like, they're starting to push it to where we know these 49ers can be. And it just looked a lot different without McCaffrey. I'm so excited. I know you're excited too, because I know you have him in our fantasy league. You had him as the first drafted, and he's been sitting out this whole year for you. So, like, for you, it's like double-edged sword thing, but like in a good way.
Well, for me, it's like, hey, Kyle, how about a little heads up before I draft this guy 1.1 that he's not going to play at all for half the year? Come on, I'm drowning over here. I'm okay. Actually, I'm actually keeping my head above water, and I'll get my hopefully most productive player back for the stretch run in my fantasy league. I'm sure a lot of fans out there had Christian McCaffrey if they had that first overall pick in their fantasy leagues as well, and got duped there at the beginning of the season. Got the okie doke and getting nothing to show for their 1.1 picks in their fantasy leagues. Yeah, and it's the 49ers are a better team than 4-4, right? That's what I keep coming back to. Maybe they're not a perfect team, and maybe we'll find out in a couple of weeks, and we can be like, man, maybe it's not the 49ers year. Maybe they lose a couple games. They've got some tough games down the stretch, and maybe they can't go on a run and win a bunch of games. But man, they've gone on a run so many times when they're healthy in the second half of years. And I think this is another perfect opportunity for the 49ers to do that and play a lot better ball. And not just because Christian McCaffrey, like they should have a better record than they had in the first half, even without Christian McCaffrey, right? Just make a couple more plays, finish a couple of games, right? We'd be talking about this team so much differently if they were 6-2. They just need to make 2 plays, make those plays.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. And so Christian McCaffrey will help that, getting Juwan Jennings back and healthy will help that. And we'll see if, the young rookie wide receivers are up to the challenge in the second half. Now they've gotten their feet wet in the NFL. So I think John Lynch kind of hinted at this in interviews this week, talking about the trade deadline. He's like, we're getting a lot of guys back. I think that's probably going to be most of our additions. We're going to be a better team in the second half of the year. And he kind of hinted they weren't going to do a lot at the trade deadline. And he also hinted, he was asked, I think by Tim Kawakami, he was asked about, maybe adding an edge rusher or a defensive lineman in, and he kind of brought up interior defensive line. And he's like, okay, I think he kind of hinted he's going to go interior defensive line if he does anything at the trade deadline. And it's exactly what he did. Didn't do a lot and did bring in an interior defensive lineman. So John Lynch wasn't lying, truth teller. And so that's what we've seen at the trade deadline for the 49ers. Getting their own guys healthy, playing their brand of football is all they've really needed to do this year. And that's the plan for the second half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that schedule coming up, right? So it's at Bucks, and then they get to come back home, taking on the Seahawks, which is a huge game in the NFC West. Then they go at Packers, and that's that 1 o'clock start time for us. They don't have to start early. Probably going to be one of those games of the week on Fox or something. Then they got a Sunday night game at Bills. So that one obviously is terrifying because you're taking on the Bills, who are a very good football team. But it's also at Buffalo at night. So it's gonna start at 8:30 in Buffalo.
Yeah, they're going to be a little sleepy on that one.
It could be snowy. That's a sketchy game right there. And then they got Bears at home, Rams at home, at Miami, Detroit at home, at Arizona to end the season. With the way Arizona's playing right now, that could be for the division. I mean, this is an amazing 9 weeks run the 49ers are about to go in, and they're getting healthy at the right time. This is what we wanted to see as Niner fans.
As we go through the rest of the league and some of the moves that have been made at the trade deadline, I'm going to ask you what you think was the biggest move that was made. And this one wasn't the biggest move, but it was a move by the Arizona Cardinals, who are currently leading the NFC West. And they went out and traded a 6th-round pick for edge rusher Baron Browning, sort of an off-ball edge rush, pass rush specialist kind of a player. And he was more of a rotational guy for the Denver Broncos. But the Arizona Cardinals clearly needed more pass rush help. And that's where they're lacking, is on the defensive side of the ball. And the Cardinals are telling the world, hey, guys, we're in it. We're going to go try to add some pieces and make our weaknesses stronger and maybe go win this division. So it might come down to week 18. And Baron Browning, who's really impressed me a few weeks ago in prime time for the Denver Broncos, is a solid player that the Arizona Cardinals brought in for a 6th-round draft pick. And, the Cards are telling us that they think they're maybe ahead of where we thought they were going to be, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And they've played some good ball. Right now they're 5-4 and leading the NFC West, and they're going for it a little bit. So I think that was a key move. And I think what it signifies is important to me, that the Cards are starting to believe in themselves a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, when you got a really exciting young wide receiver, and, you got Kyler Murray back and healthy. And I mean, what's going on with their running back, James Conner? You expect him to get old, right? And to stop being a good running back. And I've expected that the last 3 years, and it's just not happening. He keeps getting better and better. So I can understand why Arizona did it. And it's not just Arizona that went out and got extra pieces. I know we're going to talk more about some of these trade deadline moves by teams, but I think a lot of teams were going after more depth than they were star power. Like there was a couple big names out there that we saw get traded and we're like, oh, dang. But I think 75% of the trades were like, okay, let's just get a rotational guy. Let's beef up.
Yeah, and this year, and actually probably made for a better trade deadline, is there's so many bad teams. Like the Saints probably a month ago didn't expect that they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline and fire their head coach, but they've been awful since the first 2 weeks of the season. Remember the Saints were scoring 20 points a game, and they're like, oh my God, the Saints are a lot better than we thought. And all of a sudden, they've just been the worst team in the league since then. Crazy how that has taken a turn. Yeah, turn for the South there. And there's 9 teams with only 2 wins in the NFL right now. So not quite the parity we usually see in the NFL. And so I think that made for more moves. And, it's hard for a lot of teams to trade big time players because they are going to try to, get after it and build a good roster the following year too. So, and GMs don't want to trade away players for somebody else and collect draft picks that they're not going to get a chance to use. So like a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trent Baalke's like, oh, I'm going to get fired. I don't want to just go, I want to have the best season I can before I get fired. And I don't want to get a bunch of draft picks for somebody else to use next year. So I think that happens a lot. And the NFL trade deadline is actually even with the lack of a lot of big names at the actual trade deadline. There was DeAndre Hopkins and Cooper and even Za'Darius Smith and Marcus Lattimore. There were some pretty big names, and in the past, like maybe you'd get one or two trades. Like the NFL trade deadline is still a lot more fun than it was for a long time. So not quite the NBA or NHL or Major League Baseball, but it's a lot more of an event than it used to be. So it was still a pretty fun day.
Yeah, you mentioned it. You don't see a ton of trades. I mean, you left out Devontae Adams, right? Amari Cooper. There was a lot of trades this year, which I think is more than we've seen in the past. At least it felt like more big name guys getting moved around than we've experienced before.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of those bigger moves. What do we think were the biggest moves that were made? The biggest difference-making maneuvers at the trade deadline around the NFL next. Week 10, the San Francisco 49ers are back in action. You want to bet on your favorite squad? Well, you can at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And you can tackle all the NFL action because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to go check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. You can find it all in the very same place where you place your bets on the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com. So join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Bet on the Niners to win the Super Bowl. All the weekly lines, prop bets, live in-game betting, NBA, NHL, every sport imaginable. You can find it all at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I think I have to nominate, and this is recency bias because of what we just saw on Monday Night Football. How did we let DeAndre Hopkins go to the Kansas City Chiefs? And all of a sudden you just see oh no, you threw it up and then he caught it.
Yeah.
Like, oh no. Did we just let the Chiefs get a guy who's going to be a problem for the rest of the league? Because that's where they were having problems, figuring out wide receiver, figuring out their offense. And, they didn't get Devontae Adams, but they got DeAndre Hopkins. He looks like he might be a pretty darn good fit for Patrick Mahomes there. And I know the Chiefs get a lot of crap. Like fans are like, oh, the refs help them win and all this stuff. But seeing Patrick Mahomes, like third down, like first and second down, they're garbage. On third down, he finds a way to convert. He hurts himself, runs off the field. It's like, oh my God, Carson Wentz is going to come in. Patrick Mahomes will be done for the year. And it's like Vince McMahon's right in the script. He runs back on the field like nothing ever happened. 2 minutes later, it's like, how could you look like that and be walked off the field? And then you just trot on the field like nothing a little bit later. And so it's so frustrating. And then you see him get a new weapon. He scores 2 touchdowns on Monday Night Football to help him escape with another win. 8-0 Chiefs. I feel like DeAndre Hopkins might be kind of the underrated, most impactful trade at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, you saw they're starting to build chemistry, and that's terrifying because talking about DeAndre Hopkins, who at times has been near the top, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL in his career. And yeah, he's maybe a step slower, but if you can get position on a guy, you know that Patrick Mahomes is going to find you and he's going to get you the ball. Because as a 49er fan, I hate Patrick Mahomes. I hate him because he's so good.
Yeah.
He's just so good. It's so frustrating to watch him play football. I just root against him every single time. But that's respect. It's because he's so good is why I hate him and why I root against him. It's brutal. And I think you're right. I think that was a real dangerous move for the NFL to allow that to happen. And I mean, for 49er fans, you just hope that maybe Za'Darius Smith going to the Lions isn't going to be a big deal because we could just focus on the NFC, right? I mean, to me, I think the biggest move is the Commanders, right? They going out and got Marshon Lattimore. Like, that's great for them. The Commanders are making a move. They're making a push. They've been irrelevant for how many years now? They get a young rookie quarterback who's exciting. He's bringing out the best in his receiving core. He's bringing out the best. Austin Eckler looked left for dead last year, and all of a sudden he starts playing in a good offense, and he looks like an exciting young back. Like, I like what Washington is doing right now. So to me, I think that was a great move for them to kind of shore up their defense a little bit.
Can you imagine being a Commanders fan? It was like the laughing stock of the league.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, new ownership. They got a good GM, Adam Peters, like what he's doing over there. All of a sudden, you have a franchise quarterback. All of a sudden, you're like 7-2, and you're like, whoa. Even our like wildest dreams of what you hoped you would be for a Commanders fan, they're even beyond that. They're making trades at the deadline. It's like, well, I guess we got to go for this. We got no choice now. And they go get probably the biggest move of at least trade deadline day with Marshon Lattimore there to strengthen their weakness. Similar to the Arizona Cardinals, you're sitting there looking at yourself like, we have to go for this thing now. And so it was a huge move. So love what Adam Peters is doing over there with the Washington Commanders.
Yeah. And can we talk about how bad you talk about joke ownership, right? And how as soon as they're gone, it's like they got better. What's going on in Dallas? You give them a 4th round pick for a flop of Mingo? Like, I don't understand. You guys still think you got a shot, or is this a future move like for next year? I'm baffled at what's going on in Dallas right now. I really don't understand it.
It's basically the same as what they did with Trey Lance. They're like, well, Trey Lance, top 3 pick. This was about 2 years ago. We like him enough. Let's spend a 4th round pick and see what you get. And it's like, oh, well, I guess he's our number 3 quarterback. But Dak goes on to IR. Maybe we'll see Trey Lance now.
Yeah, you never know.
The Mingo move, and like for sure, the Cowboys are weird and doing weird stuff right now. But this is not a move for right now. This is not a buy move at the deadline. This is here's a guy we liked. We had a top 50 grade on him or whatever. He was a 2nd round pick. Panthers are trash and they're using him completely wrong. We're going to use him different. And we still think he's talented, and let's spend a 4th round pick and he'll be a member of the 2025, 2026 teams for cheap on a rookie contract. I think that's the idea there. So, but it does from the stand, because a lot of what happens at the deadline, you think of it as, oh, this team's bad, they have to sell. This team's good, they have to buy. But you have to look at the long term as well. And I think that's what this move was. I still don't know if it was worth a 4th round pick for the Cowboys to go get Mingo, because I think maybe you had a top 50 grade on him, but then another team drafts him and helps you realize, oh, good thing we didn't spend that top 50 pick. He's not right. So maybe that's part of it too. But it was definitely a move for the future. That wasn't them buying now. But they're in trouble. Dak's going on IR, it looks like. And so we'll see what happens. And who knows? Maybe it's a Trey Lance to Jonathan Mingo in Dallas down the stretch. I have no idea, but they're in bad place, and they're a little bit light on talent. And we saw it the Rams too. When you have that stars and scrubs team build and you lose a couple stars, even one, it can start to fall apart pretty quickly, and that house of cards collapses. And I think, no Micah Parsons really hurt them. And now, even when you get Parsons back, maybe not Dak for a while. And so you're still going to be bad. Yeah, this is a move.
What, CD's got the AC joint thing going too in his shoulder.
Yeah.
I mean, one bad hit and he's done. Like,
I think our listeners probably don't mind pointing and laughing at the Dallas Cowboys right now, especially after beating them too. And so there's things not going great there.
There's a part of me, as I'm sure a part of you and a part of our listeners, that hope that they continue to lose, right, with Cooper Rush, and then we see Trey Lance come in and he actually does well. Like, not well enough to put them into the playoffs or well enough to make Dallas viable again, but just to see him succeed, because he went through so much as a 49er fan, a lot of which was not his fault. Running quarterback sneaks up the middle with your 1st round draft pick, not the best idea, right? And got to set him back an entire season. And I don't know, deep down, I've got some love for Trey Lance that I hope he does figure it out with the team. You see what Sam Darnold did, right? It's possible. It's possible that some of these young guys that just don't figure out in their first spot, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 stops, maybe even 4 in the case of Darnold, before they actually find a spot that fits for them.
It took like 8 years for Geno Smith, right?
Yeah, you look back to like a guy like Gannon with the Raiders way back in the early 2000s, like journeyman quarterback. All of a sudden he gets on the Raiders and he leads them to a Super Bowl. Like, it can happen in the NFL. And with a guy like Trey Lance, I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, still so young. And Trey Lance is the same age as like a lot of the rookie quarterbacks.
That's crazy.
In this, yeah, he's the same age as Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. So we'll see. Anyway, Cowboys are trash. I think that is the
amen to that.
Bottom line there.
We love it.
Really good though are the Detroit Lions. They added Za'Darius Smith. And that was like kind of a move they had to have. And I wonder if the 49ers were in on that, because there was rumors like well before the trade deadline that the Lions were linked to Za'Darius Smith. And then it kind of didn't happen until today. And they sent a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick. I bet I don't know if it was the 49ers, but I bet there were other teams that were like, okay, we'll send a 5th round pick too. And so they're like, all right, Lions, everyone else is willing to also send a 5th round pick. So you got to add that 6th round pick in there. And so I think that's why there was that extra pick in with the Za'Darius Smith trade. And I still like it for the Detroit Lions, but the Browns were able to kind of wring one more late round pick in 2026 out of them. So, but I mean, that's a good move. The Lions needed that. And the Lions, solidified themselves. They were already and made themselves a little bit stronger as the 1 seed right now in the NFC.
Yeah, they're definitely the team to beat. So let's hope that Jared Goff starts throwing interceptions again. Did you see that crazy stat that they have more touchdowns over the past like 4 or 5 games than he has incompletions?
It's insane. Yeah. More touchdowns than incompletions. It's been the most efficient offense. They're running the ball. They're throwing the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown has the highest completion percentage when targeted, and Jared Goff has the highest completion percentage as a quarterback. So you put those things together. So high efficiency. And then you add a little bit more, veteran talent on the defensive line, which is needed for Detroit. So, yeah, they're in a good spot.
Scary.
Yeah, Niners will
very scary.
Niners got to prove they can beat some good football teams here coming up. This is not a cakewalk for the 49ers, even though we're confident the Niners are going to be a better team in the second half than they were in the first half. Schedule is tough as well. So they got their work cut out for them. That's for sure.
Yeah, take care of business this weekend in Tampa Bay. Get us started on the right foot.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love all of our everydayers and appreciate the new listeners as well. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
See you.